Afternoon and a very warm welcome, everyone, to this Nordic Model Now webinar, Easy Money or Excuse for Abuse, How OnlyFans Broke Down the Boundaries of a Generation. Thank you so much for joining us. We've allowed time for a Q&A and discussion after our speakers, but you can type questions into the Q&A box at any time. Please do keep them on topic, and please understand that we probably won't have time to answer every single one, but any that aren't answered we'll use to inform future events. Before we hear from our two brilliant speakers, I'm just going to very briefly run through some basic info about OnlyFans for anyone who's unfamiliar. OnlyFans is an online platform where so-called content creators can share content and chat with paying fans. In theory, it's a safe and secure platform for sharing any kind of content, but in practice, it is mostly sexualized content. In other words, porn. And there's a lot of documented abuse and crime happening on the platform, including child abuse and third parties, such as Andrew Tate. We all know him, pimping women. There are more than 4 million so-called content creators, the vast majority of whom are or purport to be young women. OnlyFans takes a 20% cut of their earnings. There are more than 1 billion visits to the OnlyFans site, every month, and about 500,000 new subscribers sign up every single day. Users spent $6.6 billion US dollars on OnlyFans in 2023. It is big business, hugely profitable, and registered in the UK. Last year, the owner, Leonid Radvinsky, paid himself £379 million. That's more than £1 million a day. But the average so-called content creator makes only about £132 a month. Not at all what the hype in the media would have you believe. OnlyFans does nothing to promote users' content, so they have to hustle on social media to get paying customers or fans. You may have seen it on Twitter, awful lot of promotion going on there from creators directing you to the platform. This has led to women being in competition with each other and doing more and more extreme stunts in an attempt to get attention. For example, Lily Phillips recently had sex with 100 men in one day, and Bonnie Blue allegedly had sex with more than 1,000 men shortly afterwards. All of this was filmed with the aim of releasing it and getting even more fans, which of course begs the question where all of this is leading. Now, I'm absolutely thrilled, I'm a huge personal fan, so I'm starstruck, to introduce our first speaker, Elly Arrow. Elly is a feminist activist who campaigns against sexual exploitation in Germany. Since 2017, she has been researching and publishing essays on how prostitution impacts on policy, the health of society, and popular culture. She runs the German version of the Invisible Men project, which highlights the words used by sex buyers to describe prostituted women. Since 2023, she has been part of the Red Light Expose podcast, which we'll come back to again later, and we're thrilled to have her. Over to you, Elly.
Thank you for having me. So here are my slides. I'm going to be giving a rough overview of the history of the porn industry, how it became more brutal, how it became more gonzo, which is a style of pornography marked both in terms of its propensity to degrade women, hurt women, and to invite the viewer through various camera techniques. These days we have virtual reality, but even before, placing the camera so that the viewer is looking at porn like he's seeing it through the eyes of the man doing something to the woman, maximizing immersion, which then lends itself to what we're seeing now, where these so-called fans or consumers, they don't just want to watch women being degraded, etc. They want to do it themselves. And we just heard about Lily Phillips and Bonnie Blue, but there are other names and other faces that I think should be seared into our collective memory, who are, I believe, the ones who have the real responsibility for this. And the first one, many of you will probably know, that's Hugh Hefner, who founded the Playboy magazine in 1953. We know what was published back then would today be considered tame. It would not be like what we'll get into, the gonzo style pornography. There was no full frontal nudity, no genitalia for a long time. But content in Playboy it always infantilized women, right? It turned them into bunnies. We know many concerning things happened at the Playboy clubs. It always dabbled in revenge porn of famous women like Marilyn Monroe. So semi-nude images of Marilyn Monroe were published in the very first edition of Playboy magazine. So from the start, this was about doing things that women hadn't even superficially consented to. Over its history, Playboy published nude images of under 18 girls 7 times. The most famous case is Brookie Shields. She was only 10 when they published photos of her. And then there was another case of 16-year-old Elizabeth Ann Roberts, whose mother pretended she was 18 when it turned out she was 16. It was Elizabeth who got sentenced to jail, not Hefner, not the cameraman, not her mother, but the victim, the girl. So even when we were talking soft porn and just magazines, there were deeply disturbing things happening in the mainstream porn industry. But it didn't, well, it can always get worse, and it started getting worse in the 1960s. Penthouse came on the market, a rival magazine to Hefner, here led by Bob Guccione, who was, we heard about Radvinsky. Back then, Guccione was one of the richest men in all of America. Porn has always been big money, big business for old men, often old white men. And he started, in order to compete with Playboy, say, why don't we publish? Actually, go ahead, let's do full frontal nudity. Let's show women's vaginas and their anuses. And this started the so-called pubic wars. That was the term that Hefner used because in order to stay in the market, Playboy then started doing the same. So we see a more extreme version of porn coming, pushing the previous pornographers to have more extreme material as well. And Guccione also published revenge porn of Madonna. So that's an age-old tradition, revenge porn of women. And then in 1974, Hustler joins the market, another infamous porn magazine. Here is its founder, Larry Flynt, who before he became a pornographer was a strip club owner. So again, like prostitution, stripping, porn, the boundaries have always been porous. And he said, how can we go further? And what he did was photograph, his pornographers then published images of full penetration, sex toys, fetish stuff, group exploitation, etc. Also, all of these were doing cartoons at the time, so photos as well as articles and cartoons. In Hustler specifically, there was a cartoon known as Chester the Molester. And the lead cartoonist of this comic, his name was Dwayne Tinsley. He was arrested because his daughter accused him of molesting her and exploiting her between the ages of 13 and 18. So again, throughout the entire history, even when we were just talking magazines, revenge porn, abuse, objectification has always been the norm, and we see the progression of things getting worse and worse and worse. And then we enter the age of video pornography. Yes, we know back then it was on tape. You'd have to go into some grimy store to get it, but things were getting progressively worse. And there's many different people one could name for the creation of the gonzo genre, but I'll just highlight one who's often named as the father, Jamie Gills, depicted here. And on the side, we see like a screenshot from one of his porn videos. What he would do is actually hire women, take him out in a taxi, drive through various big cities, and just approach men on the street, right? So where does the idea come from that random porn consumers might just want to be in the film? Well, he's one of the pioneers of doing that, popularizing it. And so the men would like go in the car with the given woman that Gills was exploiting that day and do sex acts that were then filmed. And the series was noted for its brutality and just, again, upping the ante, becoming more extreme. Gills himself went on to do a series called Walking Toilet Bowl, which then included making women ingest men's urine and feces. Well, I know this is very graphic, but that's something that's very much still being done to women today. And also the model of cameramen just going out and trying to approach random people. We've seen that in the Girls Gone Wild case, which I can't go into details here, but that's also like a very severe case of the mainstream industry just doing overt abuse of random women, essentially. Another important face and name to remember is Max Hardcore. He's still quite famous. All of these men are considered like stars and pioneers and, you know, countercultural idols even, right? There's still fans of these men, amazingly, including Max Hardcore, who is both a producer and a performer. Many men who want to be behind the camera also want to be in front. We know that. And he normalized many of the things that are now staples of porn, like gagging women with a penis so it's hard for them to breathe, spitting on women, again, urinating, involving vomit, fisting, so pushing up a fist inside a woman's vagina and trying to stretch it or her anus to pretty extreme degrees. And he also normalized what we now know is just standard, right? Insulting women over and over during the recording and keeping that in very much intentionally. And also, many people have said, what are, right, Lily Phillips and Bonnie Blow doing? What is it with records? That wasn't their idea. That's been going on for a long time, for decades. In the 90s, there was already a competition going on. And one of the porn film that came out of that, you know, trying to achieve a record was the porn film Houston 620, spearheaded by the producer and performer Ron Jeremy, who is, we now know, a convicted serial rapist. I mean, like is there a single big name in porn that doesn't have a severe criminal history? Like you'll struggle to find someone. He exploited a woman whose working name was Houston, and 620 people, mostly men and some women who were paid, penetrated her all after each other. At the end of this event, she had to put ice on her genitals. So then we have another example. There was a woman in Germany in the OOs trying to break the record for oral sex, so many men in a row. In this case, there was actually STI testing. Every single man had to provide one. There was a doctor observing. And still, what happened? After 150 men, the doctor told her to stop because her vision kept going black. Like, there's no other word for this. This is just, these are records in torture. They're not records in sexiness. And then final example, sometimes people go, what about the men? Well, yes, there is an example of a man. This is the recorded record. Over 3 days, a porn performer known as John Doe recorded a porn film with 101 women. Interestingly, these weren't female fans. Of course, they were paid, right? They were paid performers. And the film was called Luckiest Man, but John Doe is one of the many male porn performers to commit suicide, which is a topic in its own right that deserves some attention. So these, again, it's really just another case of exploitation and tragedy. And right, the subject of our talk today is how does it seep into the culture? How does it affect everyone? There's abuse of many women and some men in the industry, and then it seeps out. The first place porn influence always lands is in prostitution, right? Roxy and I were over here in Germany. We see what illegal industry does. For a very long time, our government permitted so-called gangbang parties. So many, many men, one woman. Again, porous boundaries with the porn industry. Many of these were filmed and then sold as porn. Many of these boasted about the number of men and how much the woman could take, etc., and some of them even involved pregnant women. The other peril that many of us have talked about in regards to Phillips and Blue is, of course, the Pellicot case in France. How does that relate to porn? Well, how come so many men in this random rural part of France think there are women out there who love to be unconscious and used by groups of men? Well, because there's a porn genre for it. They filmed many of their acts. Why? Because it's normal to them. They've seen it 100 times over. There's also now a court case related to Pellicot where the host, someone running a porn site who published many of these abuse videos, he's now getting in trouble. So again, that this is not a tenuous relationship. It's pretty obvious. And finally, I can only recommend a study from, I put the source down here, Facing Reality, Addressing the Role of Pornography and the Pandemic of Violence Against Women and Girls. If anyone needs numbers to understand and believe that this is not just happening to a few unfortunate women out there, this is about all of us, if we care about women and girls at all. There were very concerning statistics that I drew from this meta study. So 1 in 3 UK men under 40 have strangled someone in a sexual context. I have to say, I was shocked. I didn't realize it was this much. 1 in 3 US women had been strangled during her most recent sexual encounter. 1 in 3 UK girls and women between 16 and 24 had engaged in often unsafe anal sex, which again comes from the porn industry. That's part of gonzo, very brutal anal sex. Over 1 in 10 UK women aged 18 to 25 has become the victim of revenge porn. That's 2 or 3 girls in every class, right? And at the same time, condom use and awareness around STIs is still problematically low. This isn't sex positivity where we all just authentically explore ourselves in a safe environment. This is a system of, yeah, violence filtering down from the porn that our generation grew up with, and we're rightfully concerned for those coming after. So I'll summarize, right? This is our assessment of what the hell happened. How did we get here? How is our sexual culture so violent? It's market competition, right? Again, Playboy and Penthouse and Hustler, and then Pornhub and all the other sites competing with each other. Who can be more edgy? Then we have the individual consumer who might start out with just some, lingerie photos, but then it's not as titillating as before. So what else can I go? I can go to girls only porn. I can go to group. And we know there's a documented effect where individuals escalate in their porn use to more and more brutal stuff. And finally, what Gail Dines talks about often is the defanging of feminism. We now have a mainstream feminism that says it's fine if the woman said she's fine, there's nothing to talk about. We don't need to talk about the fact that she was slurred or that she was, this was a very high risk act. None of that. It's all good. If you say anything critical, you're a hater. Actually, saying anything about this is sexist. I think these are the 3 factors that come together to create the current moment. And that's all I'm going to say for now, because I'm going to give it over to Roxy, who will tell us more about OnlyFans specifically, how it fits into all of this, and the men who run it, which again, it's wild that people call themselves left-wing and feminist, celebrate this company. It's wealthy, white dude bros running the show, and they do not have women's best interest at heart, not even remotely.
Elly, thank you so much. Incredibly informative and horrifying. As always, incredibly informative. I'm now honoured to introduce our next speaker, Roxy Roots. She is a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. After a life of not fitting in, she ended up in the sex abuse industry, where she experienced all forms of commercial sexual abuse, including digital exploitation, where she witnessed the rise of OnlyFans. She has lived experience of how pornography shapes and fuels our culture, and now speaks publicly about her experiences, with a special focus on talking to youth about the marketing of sexual liberation, quote unquote, by educating about its harms. Roxy, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. So yeah, I come from the perspective of a survivor that has gotten out of 4 years of what probably most women go through that enter this industry, which is struggling, shifting shifting gears, changing the marketing, and basically falling out. And since then, I have, yeah, I think out of, well, my need to understand how I got there, been really thorough in not only looking at my own journey and how I got into the sex trade by culture and by, yeah, what we've just discussed before, by being a millennial, one of the first generations that had access to, well, video, internet pornography, even though I was fairly late. But yeah, speaking from someone, from a woman growing up in this early 2000s culture that became more and more mainstream, and where, well, when we speak about women like Bonnie Blue and Lily Phillips and those cases, the focus is always on the money and on their choice, their success, and obviously um, for anyone in this industry, it would be really detrimental to be addressing actual issues, actual things that are unhealthy, because the porn industry is the one, well, the sex trade in general is the one industry where the feelings of a woman really doesn't matter. It is an industry that is based around the sexual entitlement of men, and anything that actually addresses harm and or issues, just, you know, it doesn't sell well. So but the what we witnessed basically just in these two very, you know, pushed in the headlines women, was this dichotomy of, you can actually see what's happening. You can see that what is happening and what they're enduring is inhuman, and or, you know, physically so, and mentally and just holistically so disturbing that no marketing can actually rid of it. And it reaffirms again and again what the porn industry is, which is a misogynistic pile of men's hatred, basically. And whenever there's a woman coming up with in the headlines, the negativity, the shaming, and the, you know, the you know, just shaming her for being famous for this, basically, even though it's all medially created, you know, never leaves place for the men that actually attend and the reasons for them attending. And perhaps that is one of the things that I could address for a second, which is, you know, the short term pleasure from harming a woman like this is such a now culturally normalized thing through only 20 years of unrestricted internet pornography, which is obviously made by men for men. And the most staggering thing is that obviously now everything is seen and witnessed in real time. You can see, you can get the updates, you can see these acts, the marketing for these events straight in front of you, and it looks like it's completely organic. It is the women's own decision to all of this. But what never well, what happened now is that after the porn industry was a big and closed elitist thing where there was agencies, there was men acting as kind of like gatekeepers and letting women in, this industry declined alongside with the internet and the free porn sites, but also with obviously the 2008 crash, which meant less money, and similar to the reality TV boom that we had back in the early 2000 and 2008 onwards, the sets became smaller, the money, money and fees for models, quote unquote, were lower, and the acts got extremer, just due to the sheer level of content online. So men that grew up, well, all men basically, they from 2008 onwards, which is also mobile telephone, and it's that whole time is very important to see, just as a jumping off point, the decline of actual money that you get from being abused, that funnily also co-occurs with the EU situation, where, for example, in Germany, with by 2008-10, we had lots of Eastern European women flooding the market. It's the same thing, the internet is flooded, countries are flooded, and then the prices are lowered. And this whole thing is basically, well, this is what always happens. This is what happens in the sex trade in general. The more the more demand, the more the more younger and easily exploited women are coming in, the more extreme the competition is. And I think this is just really, really important, just to see, we had all these things before. We had these extreme headline or news making things before, as Elly has shown in her, with these names that we all know. But what is happening now is that women, as this, similar to men, grow up in this saturated environment, and from 2008 onwards, with the rise of social media platforms and the slow, soft pornifications of those as well, and the influencers that came up, just a couple of years later, from just talking about female influencers, the beautiful ones, the seductive ones, would get higher numbers. And so this competition, all of this kind of pushed by the algorithm, but also pushed by male fans, male followers who follow the whole porn and internet culture, kind of like made it so that the customer, that the sex buyer, that the paying abuser basically merges and becomes part of the game. So Elly was talking about the forums. I think you did mention the forums. So early porn forums where professional porn reviewers instantly add any new face to the scene. Instantly, there's going to be a profile made. They try to find out everything about the woman. So that happens automatically. There's like men that their whole business is to roam the internet and add women to the directories, to the forums, and becomes like a big circle jerk, to call it, to be blunt. And these forums were already, like, before OnlyFans, before social media, would recommend, for example, women that they maybe saw on something that was common back then. It was niche sites. It would be websites with particular, it would be anal, it would be teen, it would be, that used to be the thing. similar then to the categories, but they would recommend women to the porn business, and then they would get into it. And so what we now have is on top of this whole culture that was already there, men that are in cahoots with the producers, they're all talking to each other, they get recommendations, they started pushing or tagging porn companies on social media profiles of women that they would like to see. On top of all of this social media / pornography culture or interface comes then OnlyFans, created in 2017, created by someone who has already previous industry experience, someone who actually stole passcodes and sold them like the early internet weird sex abuse material shifting, and then taken over by this venture capitalist in 2019, I think I remember that correctly. And the whole concept of that site is based upon social media. It is called social media. It is called just a content creator platform, aka influencer. It's just another word for influencer. And the biggest well, it is basically just a classic company like Uber, where you have to market yourself. There's no marketing for you, and that this is what they were banking on. It's not that they were like, well, we are not going to help you. They were like, we are going to give you a site where you can upload your stuff, but then we don't do anything else. It's when it started in 2017-18, it was a really, really bad site, really, really poorly managed, lots of issues, lots of technical issues, but yet it became more and more. It was the first site that paid 80%, so that only took 20%, and everything before that, all the webcam sites, all the content sites were all basically 60%, 50%. It really, really took a lot of cut. So that's their only thing. Really poor site, and then you have to basically put your link, and that's basically how OnlyFans not only became that big, mostly during the pandemic, because everyone was struggling, and they had some pop singers mention their name in some songs and stuff, and so the hype went up. Everyone was desperate, and that's how we got to where we are now within only 4 years. And we have to now it's almost 5 years, I guess. The level of Leonid Radvinsky's money has basically just like what 50,000. It's just an insane boom. The market is totally oversaturated, and it is still the only monopoly site in this in this level, because it is just like Pornhub nowadays, like so many other platforms that we know, just kept the base because it was the earliest one, it was the first one, and whatever issues they have, they couldn't get. They are just probably have enough money to just litigate and do nothing about it. There's no proper moderation, and this is all due to the fact that on the front they are marketed as not an 18 plus website. They are not an 18 plus website. This is their whole shtick. And so the escalation from only 2020 to now has just been the classic escalation. Just a quick run through. I don't know how much time I still have left. Basically, we had 2020. Everything was still normal on this side, which would mean that most women had a $9.99 fee to get in, basically to the paywall, and lots of them had way higher. And then with the rise of so many women, in 2020, lots of the highest paying, highest earning women started lowering their entrance fee for their paywall fee to £3, $3, and sometimes free trials for 30 days. Okay, and so what they did is just what all the other market, like what the market does, you know. They're just like, okay, I have money now, I'm a you know, I'm a make the best out of it. I know this is how I get the most out of it. So it shifted from a very, well, quote unquote free, where most women were kind of like doing their own thing. Some women had lots of content on their page, like when you subscribe, that you can see, and lots of women had only a little bit and had made lots of money from these quote unquote messages, where you pretend you message the subscriber, but it's actually just not. It's just mass messages to all of them, and you just hope someone opens the stuff. And so so from 2020, this is what was the standard. It was £3 to get in, and then minimal content, just preview on the main site, and then lots of spamming of messages. That's how they made money, and that's how they got, you know, that's an easy way to get in lots of clients. And anyone who just didn't want to do that, anyone who was like, maybe I don't want to, you know, maybe I just want to have £20 as an entry, like, you can't, you know, it's just not happening. So this was standard from 2020, and then this kind of like made the path for these extreme things to be advertised, to be you know, publicly even shown on social media. These quote unquote slut walks, where women have to walk with the semen still on the face, in like public stuff, basically. Like public became became in 2021, I think, also correlated to people being able to get out again. It was kind of like weird to go to stores, go and walk around and film yourself, and just lots of this disgusting stuff like that. Very important also, what is happening under OnlyFans is that obviously under any kind of like viral tweet or viral thing, women would add their links and do this marketing stuff, which is also so we're talking about like how the culture is, like how it will shape or has shaped the culture and or women of today. This is what it is, you know. It is the, as Elly said, the defanged feminism, the you go girl, the girl boss. Yeah, let her show her curves if she wants to, which then leads to, you know, this, well, they need to advertise, i.e., and then they just like put their stuff onto anything. Bad headlines, like I saw, you know, like you see like the favorite thing is like any big viral hashtag. I remember when COVID came or whatever, and then lots of women would like, you know, you just put like the most viral hashtag so you can come up in the algorithm. And this always happens. And it's with war hashtags, with like insane shit, like really, really, really bad stuff. So this is what happens. Like it's the competition is so tough, but then also like, like when you're in it, and this is something, well, I have to say, like I had really high standards, and I never kind of like, you know, shared on platforms or did that kind of stuff, because I always felt like this, well, I was just uncomfortable. I didn't go to TikTok and any of the platforms that would have lots of children, but I do understand the other side, which is like the normalization of all this kind of like saucy stuff, and then correlating with that, so with like just pop songs and stuff like that. But then correlating with that also is like the social media environment has created these because women that advertise get often banned. So now there's a whole language and lingo that is used to avoid getting banned, so that OnlyFans became OF, and or you know, spicy stuff, or you know, all of these kind of like things that not only help evade the algorithm, which from, you know, from the woman that is advertising feels like targeting that they get banned, so they keep avoiding them. But it also means that children and everyone can see them, and I mean, there's I don't know. I think I don't have much time left. Can you give me like a number? What? I can't see anything here.
I think you're okay. You go on. We're fascinated.
Okay. Was yeah. So now we have obviously two women who got famous with their niches. Also, something that is really important, you have to find this niche, and then you have to, if you see it works, you have to stick with it, and you have to escalate within that, right? So that's Lily Phillips, the girl next door, um uh um what's it called, like clean girl, like kind of like looks kind of what's it called, looks kind of shy, but then, you know, is the young slut, so the young teen, this is that category that she is just put in, like she, like, this is not something that she chooses. The market puts her into that and then reaffirms that, and then she calls herself that. She is now, yeah, I'm happy to be a slut. I'm totally happy. I love that. And then there is Bonnie Blue. She's like the older woman educator. She even sells it like that. She's like, oh yeah, with all this porn around, I am actually here to give young men their first time, like proper, with consent and stuff like that. And it's just like, what? So these are just two really good examples of like how, well, the roles, they've been there before. The porn industry has all of these roles that are just ticked off. So she would be like a young MILF basically in porn terms, and that's what she performs as, and that sells well. And then I think one really important example that just like has to be just, well, pulls in the porn industry, and or how everything is just like repeated. So OnlyFans is just like the porn industry, but it's like done on yourself, like by yourself, because you're promoting it. But what's missing is always that you are within a market, and the market decide what you are, and if you are successful or not is depending on that market and what is fashionable right now, what is wanted right now. And where we had well, now we have these kind of like uh, uh, single women that come out, but really important, I think, is like how the circle closes again, how it comes back to the start, which is the Bob House, which is something that was founded in 2020, like just in December last year, 2024, by Sophie Rain, I think her name is, and she was 18 when she started. As I think now I think she's the richest, or one of the like extremely rich in the first 2 years. She's only 20 when she founded the OnlyFans version of a proper professionally and done by another creator, OnlyFans version of creator houses that we know from the boys influencers back in the YouTube era, or from just the Playboy house, just to be, you know, and or from the webcam houses that Tate used to run. Same thing. You usually come through an agency. They're all. It's literally just how the porn industry in the US still works today. You have the agencies that scout the models, then they contract them through the agency to the Bob House. It's just all, there's nothing organic anymore now in 2025. There's nothing self-made about there's, and by big surprise, there's nothing self-made and or like really properly like out of her own head in the case of, for example, Lily Phillips, because these gigs that she did with these competitions, with these records, came after she had already done 1 or 2 scenes for Brothers, and Brothers is now benefiting, basically, like the porn industry is now basically benefiting from how Gail Dines calls them, the porn ready women that come that turn 18 porn ready, that then start the OnlyFans, do lots of like crazy stuff, and then they get cross-promoted on Brothers, doing some again reaffirming the niche, the character. So in Lily Phillips' case, I think Bonnie Blue had already a scene with a professional company as well, and Brothers also organized and organized everything about these shoots. At least the 1,000 men shoot that Lily Phillips just did in start of February, I think. So this is a crossover, and the sad and or crazy thing about it is that now what used to be fought against within the industry by keeping the industry professional only, and by separating the professional industry that was kind of like trying to fight the fight for safety for women within the Me Too era, by doing like, lots of testing and testing these after shoot what's it called again, where you um, they have a name, but like basically after extremely heavy shoots that you have a short questioning how you if you felt under pressure in some kind of way, but that also means that you have to do them to get the money, so you have to kind of like lie, and all of these things that were kind of like pushed for within the 2010s until 2020. There was a big push to create guidelines and consent sheets and all this kind of stuff. This was all blown to pieces by OnlyFans, and by then the porn industry having like really easy access to willing participants that need the marketing, need the crossover promotion, to then now have free, they're basically now benefiting not only through the streaming or the tube sites, but they are benefiting by actually owning parts of that content. So yeah, very important. It looks like this is all like their own ideas, but alongside the culture that they grew up that normalized everything like that already, that like banalizes all critique like as shaming or questioning the choice, but a decision is not a choice, and until you experience things and you maybe have a little bit of time away, you might not even really acknowledge the stress under which you act when it comes to this competitive industry. And I think this is where I'll close it, that yeah, it's OnlyFans has now come full circle and actually is nothing more than the porn industry like 2.0. There's no like there's only the surface idea of women sitting there and doing that, but none of the women actually do that. That's their assistants that post the links. That's their assistants put the content up. That's their assistants that organize these shoots. There's no regulations anymore, which used to be really, really important and a good topic to even slightly address the harm that the porn industry does. It's all gone down the drain. It's all gone down everywhere, because now talking about safety, talking about potential, testing and or, the harm that these, these practices are called just shaming, and we are called swerves, and there's just no way to actually talk about this properly, and that's what they were banking on. That's what social media based marketing of this kind of like industry does. It's and it doesn't ever take any victims into account. They do not care. They do not care. They do not care. They know that the younger the access is, the longer the consumer journey is going to be, and so there's that's basically it. Social media and the fake empowerment, girl bossing has now led to OnlyFans being nothing more than a like a huge monopoly that is industrialized pimping, that is global, that spans the whole globe, and that makes one man extremely rich and puts lots of women into being shamed, losing their jobs, whatever, ruining their lives, being shunned until the decades. But we all know, don't shame anyone, don't talk about it, don't criticize it, everything is fine. And that's basically where we are now, and it's very sad to say, but yeah, I guess the only thing we can do is talk about it and just be really brutally honest, and not shy away from addressing the biggest elephant in the room, which is, you know, capitalism, the fall, like the the destruction of, you know, financial security that is especially women are vulnerable to, the, you know, the lack of resources that are have just been you know, just declining within the last 20 years. And yeah, we need to find healthy ways out, support women, find actually socialist and or feminist approaches to how we deal with poverty, and how we deal with government, and how women are treated everywhere on this globe. So yeah, thank you.
Roxy, bloody hell. I mean, that is absolutely just such a phenomenal in the round retrospective of everything that is going. I mean, you touched on so many points. Uh, things like what struck me, things like the degradation is threaded through, isn't it? It's all part of it. It's part of the attraction. Men don't just want to watch sex; they want to watch women be brutalized and also humiliated, which is a really interesting point. I didn't even know the things you learn. You just think, Christ, I wish I could go back to 10 minutes 10 minutes ago when I was more innocent than I am now.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that they were making people women walk around in public. I didn't even realize that was a genre with, you know, semen on their face. And what also strikes me, and what I think we should all be, you know, desperately trying to impress on anybody talking about OnlyFans, is that it is grueling, minimum wage drudgery. There is nothing fancy about it. There's so many. I've seen the marketing of very young women walking around these palatial McMansions, saying, you know, OnlyFans bought me this, and it's stunning. You think you find yourself thinking, Christ, you know, maybe 6 months at that, and I'd be on the property ladder, and I'd have this equity and all this.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a thing, but it's not. It is admin, endless degradation of yourself, marketing yourself across all these platforms where, as you said, as you point out, children can see, and endless abuse, as we saw with people like Amber Heard or whatever. Men don't respect it, as they talk the sex workers work nonsense, but what's the first thing they say to a woman who's been shamed in the media or lost her job or whatever? It's always OnlyFans, love, get on OnlyFans. So I think it's just, and it's the ultimate comeback. It's the ultimate put down. And also what struck me listening to you is that OnlyFans literally, the culture is now so pornified, it's so successfully infiltrated through all these ways that you mentioned, that it's literally mentioned by name in pop songs. The one that I thought of immediately, I'm sure there's loads, but Beyonce on the song Savage with Meg.
No.
She's like, oh, my FRN and starting OnlyFans, whatever. This is a billionaire normalizing with two little girls at home. And the other thing that the last thing that I wanted to say that struck me, that I just thought you just made such a brilliant point, and Elly, you touched on this as well, very articulately, is that as Gail Dine says, objective harm harms objectively. It doesn't matter about consent. When the Lily Phillips thing came out, I was arguing with people saying, if I put up an advert saying, I want you to come and beat me to death with hammers, are those men who would do that, who would beat me to death with hammers? Nothing, no sexual activity or anything that then blows the line of whether I would enjoy it or whether it was a great fun for all involved kind of thing. Beat me to death with hammers. I'm consenting to that ostensibly. Are they murderers or not? When do we start looking at who turns up to beat someone to death with a hammer, or indeed line up in a corridor in their socks to be number 84 to shag some woman on camera? And I thought the thing that you mentioned, Roxy, is just so true, that even to speak those words, you are immediately branded a swerf, that it's the women you hate, that it's it's so localized on the women. It just I just thought you were absolutely fantastic, and thank you so much to both of you. It's brilliant.
Thank you.
I'll go back to the just go through to the slides now. Before we go on to the Q&A, I'm just going to very briefly run through the Nordic model and full decrim, explaining how they differ and also what we think needs to happen with OnlyFans. Because before I heard of the Nordic model, I would have said that full decriminalisation would be the way to go, and you tax it and it stops trafficking and all this kind of thing. This is the this sort of knee-jerk response, and it's from a well-intentioned place. But so first, the Nordic model, which we campaign for, also known as the equality model. It's the only approach to prostitution policy and legislation that recognises prostitution as part of the structural oppression of women and other marginalised groups, as both a cause and a consequence of the persistent inequality between the sexes. The Nordic model was introduced in Sweden in 1999 after extensive research revealed the extent of women's suffering in prostitution, and B, sex buyers' ignorance and lack of care of the consequences of their choices and actions. The researchers developed the idea of one-sided criminalisation, where buyers, rather than those selling sex, would be held accountable. So, the specifics. The Nordic model decriminalises selling sex because no one should be criminalised for enduring exploitation and abuse. It invests in services that provide support and genuine routes out of prostitution. Most research shows that about 90% of those involved at any given time want to get out. That's polled and proven over and over again, but can't see how. The services do need to include access to safe, affordable housing, training, healthcare, childcare, legal and financial advice and aid, emotional and psychological support, and, if necessary, drug rehabilitation. The Nordic model makes buying sex a criminal offence, with the key aim of changing men's attitudes and behaviour. It aims to create a society where no man could even imagine he has the right to sexually exploit another human being. The penalty for a first offence is typically a fine rather than prison, which provides funding for the services, because I'm sure that's what everybody thinks. Well, who's gonna pay for that? Well, let's have the men pay for it. The Nordic model strengthens laws against trafficking, pimping, and brothel keeping. Included with all the above, there needs to be a plethora of holistic measures, including public information campaigns, education in schools, training for the police, long-term investment in services and alternatives for women, and real, concrete, and concerted measures to address poverty and inequality. When the Nordic model is well implemented, It has been shown to reduce the size of the industry and create a hostile destination for international sex traffickers. In Sweden, for instance, it has brought about a change in the culture and men's behaviour. It has widespread public support, particularly among women and young people. There has been a significant reduction in the size of the prostitution industry during a period it has been rapidly increasing in most other European countries. It's not surprising, therefore, that the sexploitation industry hates the Nordic model. They insist it is more dangerous for the women involved, which is simply not true, as I will show. Nothing can make prostitution safe, which is why the Nordic model aims to give women genuine routes out and to prevent particularly girls, but all marginalised young people, being drawn into it. What the sexploitation industry wants is full decriminalisation, which means that all aspects of the sex trade are legal. Pimps and brothel keepers are transformed into legitimate business people, and buying sex is like going to the pub. I remember being struck by, under full decrim, pimps can call themselves sex workers and be consulted as sex workers on law and policy. As sex workers, they're pimps. Under full decriminalisation, prostitution is regarded as a standard business. There's no public funding for services to help women exit. Why would there be? Laws against sex trafficking are retained, but in practice they're almost impossible to enforce. Full decriminalisation is held up by sex industry lobbyists as the best approach to prostitution. New Zealand pioneered full decriminalisation in 2003. It has now been in place for more than 20 years, and it is claimed by lobbyists and even the New Zealand government that there has been a decrease in the number of people involved, that it's safer for women, that women can refuse clients or particular services, that brothels have regular health inspections, and that condom use is compulsory. These are the claims. However, the data in the New Zealand government's own assessment does not support a single one of these claims. The data actually shows that after the law was passed, there was a rapid increase in the size of the industry. Violence and coercion remain rife. Women can seldom refuse clients or specific acts. Unprotected sex is common because men always or nearly always, and that's a direct quote, ask for it. And there have only been 11 brothel inspections in 12 years, even though more than 1,000 brothel licenses have been granted during that same time. Another claim is that there is no sex trafficking in New Zealand. It is true that there have been no prosecutions for sex trafficking since decriminalisation has been enforced. However, there were 133 recorded cases that meet the international definition of sex trafficking in the 9 years to 2011, and without doubt many more since then that have never been recorded. When sexploitation becomes legal, it always leads to an increase in the numbers involved, not least because it sends out a message of official approval. Prostitution becomes a normal job. Buying sex is no different from getting a haircut or going for a pint, which means that more men visit brothels more frequently. There's no shame involved in it. When sexploitation is legal, in combination with the increase in the numbers involved, the police have less oversight, and most sex trafficking is not detected, meaning that in practice, sex trafficking is also decriminalised. Under the Prostitution Reform Act legislation, sex crimes against children are considered minor offences, comparable to alcohol violations. So most sexual exploitation of children also goes unregistered. This slide compares full decriminalisation with the Nordic model. The left-hand column shows what full decriminalisation means. Selling sex, pimping, brothels, and buying sex are all legal. And because it's considered a normal and legitimate job, no public money is invested in services to help women exit. The right-hand column shows the Nordic model. Selling sex is legal, but pimping, brothels, and buying sex are illegal, and there is specific public funding for high-quality holistic services to provide support and genuine routes out to all of those involved. Germany and the Netherlands have legalised prostitution, which in theory is different from full decriminalisation, but there are in fact many similarities. In both countries, there's a massive industry with huge numbers of people involved. Both New Zealand and Germany have multi-story brothels operating in plain sight. In Germany, about 1 million men buy sex every single day. Pimps and brothel owners are considered respectable business people. Buying sex is seen as no different from getting a haircut. In one German mega brothel, the mind boggles, sale day, €50, gives you access to the sauna, snacks, rest area, and as many women as you want. Ugh. This chart uses publicly available data to show the percentage of the population involved in prostitution in 6 countries: Germany and the Netherlands with legislation, New Zealand with so-called decriminalization, and Sweden, Norway, and France that have implemented the Nordic model. This shows that a much smaller proportion of the population is involved in prostitution under the Nordic model than with legislation or full decrim. This suggests that the Nordic model is effective in reducing the size of the industry, or at least in preventing its growth. Campaigners for full decriminalization say that the Nordic model is more dangerous for the women involved. If this were true, we would expect to see higher rates of homicide for women involved in prostitution in countries that have implemented the Nordic model, and lower rates in countries that have legalization or decrim. This chart shows the number of women involved in prostitution murdered by pimps and punters. It is expressed as an average annual rate per 100,000 female citizens during the years in which the legislative framework has been in place. This clearly shows that the homicide of women involved in prostitution is significantly higher in New Zealand, Germany, and the Netherlands than in Sweden, Norway, or France. This suggests that the claim that the Nordic model is more dangerous for women involved in prostitution is patently false. However, we want to be clear that we are not claiming that the Nordic model is somehow safer for women, because we do not believe that anything can make prostitution safe. Instead, it aims to reduce the amount of prostitution that takes place and the number of people involved. This data suggests that when implemented well, the Nordic model is successful in this. The fact is that prostitution is a dangerous occupation, far more dangerous than being a firefighter or a police officer. To illustrate this, I'm going to read a quote from an article from Valerie Hudson, an American academic. The homicide rate for prostitutes is 229 per 100,000, which is higher than the highest workplace homicide rates of any regular occupation, such as liquor store workers, which is 8 in 100,000, taxi drivers, which is 27 in 100,000, and US soldiers, counting combat-related deaths, 27 in 100,000 between 1980 and 2010. Yes, that's right. Prostitutes are almost 10 times more likely to be killed than soldiers in combat. There's literally no category of work with a homicide rate as high as prostitution. This should tip us off that it's not work, but is in fact a form of socially sanctioned violence. So that's where we stand on prostitution law and policy. But what about OnlyFans? You may be thinking, look, it's all online, it's quite different. Or after listening to Elly and Roxy, you may be thinking, bloody hell, what can we do to stop this? So to recap, we have seen that OnlyFans is facilitating girls' and young women's entry into porn and other forms of sexual exploitation, including prostitution. It's facilitating boys and young men becoming consumers of pornography and sex buyers and indeed pimps. Look at Andrew Tate, look at his reach. And we know from gay men that OnlyFans is also facilitating young men, particularly marginalized young men's entry into porn and prostitution as well. OnlyFans is profiting from and normalizing all of this as a business model. That's a seismic amount of damage to individuals and to society. So what can we do about it? The UK has ratified the UN Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, which is known as CEDAW. Countries that ratified a treaty like this are legally bound under international law to put its provisions into practice. This slide shows Article 6 of CEDAW, which says state parties should take all appropriate measures, including legislation, to suppress all forms of traffic in women and exploitation of prostitution of women. In this context, exploitation of prostitution of women means third parties profiting from women's prostitution. Well, isn't that what OnlyFans is doing? It's building a global industry that's directly profiting from women's prostitution and other forms of sexual exploitation. As such, we believe there are strong grounds for closing it down under Article 6. Unfortunately, the UK has not incorporated CEDAW into its national law, but this doesn't absolve the government. Under international law, governments have a binding obligation to implement the provisions of treaties it has ratified. So we will continue to push for the government to bring in new legislation that makes it a criminal offence for third parties to directly profit from women's prostitution and other forms of sexual exploitation, along with additional measures for closing down websites that violate this. Thank you. Now the Q&A. Please do enter any and all of your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll get to as many as we possibly can. Thanks.
I had something I quickly wanted to know, just something that came to me listening to Roxy. If I can just go ahead, I'll just be 2 minutes.
Please do, Elly, please.
Roxy, you mentioned about the clean girl aesthetic, right? Which is like a common visual style for influencers, which is now part of the porn industry. And I read just this morning, I was just brushing up on my knowledge about the history of Playboy. Hugh Hefner said, like in the 50s and 60s, he said, I don't want femme fatale women. I want the girl next door, is what he said. This is about finding the any woman and then making her into the so-called slut and breaking her down. So that is not new. Like it goes back to Hefner, and I'm sure it's even older. It's just, I mean, he's the face of the start of the mass commercialization and mainstreaming of all of this. So I think he called it Girl Next Door, something like that. Now we're calling it Clean Girl. That's what he wanted for the bunnies. That's what he said. So just wanted to let everyone know.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's
it's important that that none of this is, it's just nothing is new. Everything that's, just shows how deep this whole culture has gotten to. It's all normal. It just gets recycled, rebranded, remarketed, and yeah, there's nothing new or empowering about anything we are talking about.
also, and wasn't that the USP of Girls Gone Wild as well? That the whole thing is the idea that it's the same concept. It's the same impulse behind things like revenge porn or filming women without their consent or knowledge. It's they don't want, you give them a sewage, an ocean of sewage of porn of women being brutalized, degraded, humiliated, uh, and used up or whatever. They don't want that. They want the like you say, Elly and Roxy, the clean girl said, they want they want to find the Girls Gone Wild was the college girls in Cancun or whatever for spring break. They want to corrupt.
They want to turn the Madonna into the whore. I mean, it's literally just that. It's just, it's just the pure. It's like turning the nun into, you can find that everywhere.
Again, the degradation is the point always.
And
Exactly.
it's what Rachel Moran says, like when people ask her, why would anyone buy an underage girl off the street corner? She says, well, there are men, what they want to do is piss on a young bloom. Like, I'm pretty sure those are her precise words. That is the point. Take something the society theoretically considers innocent and precious
Yeah.
and destroy it for maximal effect.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh dear. Right. Bear with me one moment. So I'm just looking at our questions that have been submitted. Guys, thank you so much. There's absolutely loads here, really interesting stuff. So Ellie, Roxy, we've got a fantastic one here from Paula. The more I learn about porn, the more I despair. God almighty. Me too. How will things change? It seems impossible because the people who want to keep watching porn will simply ignore or distort any information about the risks, the harms, the negative impacts that spill over into society. If people want to avoid the truth, they can, and girls and women will be forced to grow up in a horrible world that's set up against them. And would you like a couple to be going on with? Or do you want to go for that one?
I think
Well,
you go ahead.
go on.
No, I think I'd take it question by question because then I'll forget like what the previous one was. I think it's the same for you, Roxy, right?
I did
Yeah.
the same. You guys go ahead.
Yeah. So I would say I completely understand that. I'm not gonna lie. I have days where I think like, could we ever tie down this Goliath? Like, is it possible? I still so what helps me on those days is to say, okay, but I think this work still matters. Pretty much all of us probably at some stage we're like, am I the only one who doesn't like porn? Am I the only one who thinks this is abusive? All of us probably had a stage where we felt lonely. We wondered, are we the crazy ones? And I think it matters. Every girl, woman, or man and boy who's out there thinking, I'm the only one who hates this. I don't want sex to be like this. I don't want this to be the face of intimacy, etc. I think every single person that we can reach is worth a fight. Every single person that we can convince, you know, to seek other avenues to get out of a crisis. Every single traumatized person who thinks, because what the industry does, it tells you you weren't tough enough. It says you didn't have the right skills to be a sex worker. That's a very, very common rhetoric. If we can tell them, actually, no, you were in a fucked up system, it's not your fault. Honestly, every single individual matters. And when many individuals come together, things can happen. I mean, in history, there have been movements that did tie down massive industries. Never flawlessly, never quickly, but there is historic precedence for massive cultural change. I mean, marital rape laws, we didn't get them that long ago. Voting, we didn't even get that long ago. Women in Switzerland couldn't vote till the 60s, was the 70s, like insanely, like I think some cantons even more recently. So things seem impossible until they're not. And there's many, many people who care, like teachers, parents, survivors, psychologists, police, like all kinds of stakeholders who get it and who care. Anyone who joins this fight is not going to be alone.
Yeah, and I would yeah, everything Ellie said, it can be, as someone who came out of it, you know, it's, yeah, like obviously another level of what I go through when it comes to how I feel this industry is pernicious. But in the face of like brutalization, in the face of, you know, violence of any form, like we have, like this is the only human response. And I think that this is the only way we can change something, is by actually speaking about it and actually addressing it, and actually speaking about the truth. And I think this is where everyone's struggling, you know, everyone's trying to, I think, especially in this polarized world, right, where you are either camp A or camp B, and there's no way of like actually debating anymore. My aim always in anything and everything is to try and find the center. The center is what's missing. We only have conservative, you know, we only have Madonna and whore, only like men, and generally like there's only these two versions, and there's no thing in the middle that actually addresses true female empowerment, and or empowerment in the truest form, which means that a woman can and a girl can develop freely, without fear, without pressure, without having to perform, without learning harmful practices, without being able to criticize, without being able to address anything. We have to break up this well, the only way to break up this extreme dichotomy, this extreme black and whiteness, is by just keep talking. And again, I find it really important to look at the stuff, like look at the porn sites, look at what is there, because the more we see or like read, read about what the levels of it all, because I think ignorance and or not wanting to look at this darkness is especially what kind of like keeps women in this kind of like, oh no, it's probably fine, women don't want to, like, look at that. But I think it is really important to look at what men are actually capable of doing, how depraved the content is these days. And I think that gives you a good compass to whenever it comes up, and or in your activism, to just, address that. There's nothing more important than that, because it leads to it fuels this hatred and this violence against women, and it's getting worse and worse, so.
Thank you so much, guys. There's some fantastic questions here. This is really, really well articulated stuff. A lot of them have a little bit of an overlap. So I'll read out a couple, and you guys can sort of take it from there. So we have a fantastic one here. As a woman exited from the sex trade, I'm definitely pro Nordic model. Men find new ways to exploit women until women say no. How can we turn around the popular message? The women and girls must be kind, must always say yes, and to value themselves / ourselves too much to allow men to exploit her. And there are a couple more that sort of back to back on this one. How would you suggest we tackle the rebuttal of she's choosing to do it? I think that's a fantastic question. Because of Lily Phillips and Bonnie Blue, lots of non-feminists are now talking about OnlyFans, and I'm finding it hard to convince them that this is not actually a choice anymore, which I think really both excellent points. And then there was another one similarly that I wanted to grab here as well, because from an anonymous attendee, a great point as well from people like celebrities in this case. Do we have data to counter talk the discourse by people like Denise Richards and her daughter, who try to normalize OnlyFans with the empowerment of sexuality, knowing that when they start this as celebrities, they're already in the position of power? So I know that's a lot to grapple with, but just those three sort of really struck me very good, and we'll have a couple more if we keep it tight. We'll get through a couple more as well. Thank you.
What was the first one again? Can you just repeat that?
Sorry, this is the problem when you try and stack, isn't it? So the very first one I mentioned was a lady who's exited from the sex trade, who's definitely pro Nordic model, and that men will find new and increasingly disgusting ways to exploit women. How can we turn around to women the popular message that we must be, and girls, we must be kind and always say yes, to value ourselves too much to allow this? Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's the gap that still needs to be really heavily filled with, which is the addressing of, like, that you can only really get into your body if if we are truly like non-market based, like allowing girls and women to just develop into whatever they want, without the the societal, but also especially I think familiar structures often that that lead to these automatic taking over of these of these behaviors, and or thinking that we have to perform and be nice. And I think you know the biggest gap, I think, is that we still don't have the bridge with what it means to have a healthy relationship to yourself and your body. And I think there is still some work to be done that doesn't come from purity and or from this whole liberal thing, but that actually like focuses on what was started once, which is like teaching girl teaching girls the proper body parts, but also like the whole boundary thing, and opening the opening talk early enough with teenagers, with children in the surroundings, to just address that it's not about like it's not about the face card. Looks don't equal anything. It's about developing healthily and emotionally uh stable, allowing anger. I think not allowing women, and especially young girls, to express anger is still one of the biggest issues, I think, that is not talked about. Like, this is something that I've just really understood now, a lot, like how how this is one of the first trauma. Like, whenever girls get really angry, it's not seen as like, ah, yeah, just like like boys, but it's actually repressed. Most girls do that. And I think learning healthy emotional regulation is one of the biggest issues that we have these days, and that is just one of the many issues we have. But I think just talking about it without fear and addressing it everywhere you see is I think the only thing you can do for now, before and hopefully the more we talk, the more it's seen, and yeah.
Yeah, I would so agree about the point. Anger. Anger is so important to protect you from abusers. I remember being 16 and being approached by creepy men on the street and struggling to say, "Get away from me," because I was worried I would be rude. So there's so many women and girls who've had these kinds of experiences and worse. And I would say there is much that can be done. Like, if you're in a school, can you get an expert, a porn critical sex educator in? That might, many kids are not going to hear it at home. They're not going to hear it in the media, but you might be the person who introduces them, getting someone from the outside to come and educate. Do you work in the arts? Can you put on a performance about these subjects? Uh, Read and listen to and maybe speak to survivors and create these stories. Maybe in the darkness of a theater, some woman will feel seen, and that can start her on a better journey. Do you work in a hospital? Can you and your colleagues get training to recognize trafficking, recognize domestic violence, recognize a woman who has gotten miseducated by porn about things she has to endure? Because I know with the gynecologists, the women's health centers are seeing these injured women every day. And some of them haven't yet connected that to the industry. Do you work in a male-dominated field like police, firefighters, law, frankly? Again, you and your colleague get training on how to deal better with these issues, because it's not part of the standard education of most judges and officers, etc. They don't learn about this. So there's much that you can do. And finally, just very quickly on the question of her choice, we emphasize, yes, it might be her choice. Okay, but that doesn't make the industry okay. There are many harmful, awful things that can happen regardless of choice. Choice doesn't make a magic shield around her. You find millions of women, if you ask them, are you fine with being married off by your family? Are you fine with FGM? They'll say yes, because their culture has told them that is what a good, honorable woman does. Just because a woman wants it doesn't mean we have to accept a cultural practice. If we don't accept it for these conservative societies, we shouldn't accept it when it's like some messed up uber liberal culture either. So that's what I would say.
And on that point, I would just add that a choice would be if you have choices, and a decision that is made out of lack of choices is not actually free choice. It's just a decision that, yeah, that's it. And the experience that follows that decision can and will have an impact on how you see yourself and how the world sees you. And uh, yeah, so and again, the dire situation in which women are very often in, the amount of single mothers that are on OnlyFans and these platforms, or like, all of this is just clearly a sign that this is not a choice, it's just a decision, and that's very, very important.
Thank you so much, guys. Great points there. I'm just looking through the questions here. We have time for just a couple more. Um, I let's see. I think this is a very good question from Nelly. What do you both think are unique risks on OnlyFans compared to traditional porn or prostitution? A great one there.
So it's basically the same as porn and prostitution, and then added issues. So just very particular to OnlyFans will be stalking, doxing, or like internet sleuths who are literally doing this as a hobby. I'm on directories, like lots of directories, with all of my names. I've changed my stage name 4 times in 4 years, trying to get rid of the other bits, but they are just hawks, and they put everything together, and it's really hard to get your name removed. Then you get these like, well, you get your content stolen, and there's nothing that you can do. I mean, with the tube sites there was already no chance, and that has emboldened, like, no man actually really wants to pay for porn. So because it's, and once men also find out that most of the, that now it's all age assistants and not actually the women doing it, there's even more like hatred towards the women, and even more need to grab all their content for free and do whatever with it, hate edits. There's tons of the whole, I guess, like a whole section of the internet is just alone for men rating women's performance, really disgustingly talking about them, and yeah, these are just 1, 2, 3 examples that are just yeah, unique to OnlyFans. Then obviously the need to stay connected to these people, that men that give you money, and then their need to be to constantly break any boundary, so if you have any, like, kind of don't do that, please, like, they will for sure do that. So yeah, having to read stuff about, like, I mean, that you even have to put a disclaimer, like, no goes is like, don't talk about child abuse, and then having someone talking about child abuse with their own child or whatever, like, this is all stuff that you are reading, witnessing, and then you have to get a thicker skin, i.e. dissociate all of this insanity to be able to continue. And these are just these are just a few examples of how, when you are dependent on this money, you have to just accept this behavior. You can't really say, well, most women don't say, hey, you're disgusting, and block them. They will politely say, please don't do that. And then, they will not, they don't even get a lecture. They don't get a learning curve. It's just, they'll find another woman to do that too. So there's nothing safe. There's nothing, it's the most unsafe way, obviously. And then and obviously the platform is only really famous for 5 years, and we have already, like, several femicides of OnlyFans models and suicides, so and or questionable things. So it's just, yeah, it's very unsafe on all levels.
Thank you so much, Roxy. I think we've got time for one more here. I'll do a little bit of a stack as well. Here, it seems that many young musicians are posting porn or quote unquote erotica on OnlyFans to promote themselves and fund their music tours. A couple that I can think of straight off the bat. Do you think this is now becoming the norm? And if so, what can we do to stop it? There's a real thing coming through in the questions of celebrity normalization here and what the hell we can do about that.
Wait, let's just answer that. That's really important and interesting. Again, crossover of how all industries now, it's just all you know, these streaming platforms that are just like basically ripping everyone off. So I don't know which singer it was again who got really famous with just saying it. One of the singers who was famous, pop singers, was famous in the early 2000s, now does like foot pics and all that kind of stuff. Normalized from, we had like the feed finder website that's online since, I think probably since the start of the internet, I guess, where celebrity feet are ranked and stuff. So it's, you know, foot fetish, but with celebrities, a form of, I mean, it's disgusting. And basically, we have the normalization of OnlyFans, the girl bossing of OnlyFans, and then the normalization of anything kink. It's like all preferences and everything's cool. And then we have artists who are not paid by their record companies anymore because the whole thing is in shambles since all the streaming platforms, and they get paid per, you know, per stream and whatever. It's basically nothing anymore. So they now have to get on, like, this is some major, you know, how one gig site basically created another, you know, avenue to another. It's really interesting. But yeah, it just shows how competitive, how internet in generally has destroyed on all of these monopoly sites have destroyed agency from so many people. And yeah, and we can just imagine the rush of women without jobs because they got taken over by AI. And well, it's just more women to be desperate and doing stuff like this. So
I would just quickly add to that. I'm also so depressed whenever I discover a female artist and she has incredible talent, and all the visual media advertising her as hypersexualized. I mean, that is just the norm, especially in pop, right? It is like even in the indie scene, it's just it's getting in every crevice. And I understand we're living in a time where this is especially extreme, but to be fair, it's not new. The history of women in the arts is unfortunately thousands of years of men trying to predate on them. Women on stage, actresses, dancers, singers, have often been seen as synonymous with prostitution, which is why so many cultures banned women performing. But then they were exploiting some of the young men on the stage. That, like, every patriarchal culture has this, where women artist is not about female self-expression. It's about pleasing men far too often, degrading women, taking her down a peg. This is unfortunately not new. Like, you can look at so many ancient cultures doing the same. And this is why I think it's so important that we all support female artists who are trying to carve out this. It's sad that this is like almost niche now, where they go like Billie Eilish just talked about this. I don't want to show my body, she said, and then she was pushed to do it by the culture cumulatively. But many female artists have said, I don't want to. Female actresses doing nude scenes. So many have told us they have to get drunk to do it. Super famous women have to get drunk to do it in Hollywood. We have to, like, this has to be part of Me Too. For all our sakes, the world is not a brothel. There should be no brothels, but it's like, you know, the world being men's brothel is the ongoing disaster here.
I think that's such a brilliant way to put it. We'll have one more and then we must wrap up. And thank you so much, guys, for your comprehensive responses here. Let's see, I'll try and check. One here that's coming up is my content has been downloaded, shared to various sites without my consent. What do I do? And in fact, I think that's quite meaty. So we'll have that one there and keep our responses tight, and we can wrap up and then. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, I have the same issue. So unfortunately, I think there's still this is still a big issue. The only people who really get the only women who get all of their content down are women who have like lots of money and like can pay. Like there is platforms who offer the I don't call who offer this service basically, but they cost a lot of money, and they um yeah, that's basically something that I've not been able to pay, but maybe we should maybe that's something for to actually think about now that I'm thinking about it, creating a fund for women who want to get their stuff deleted. I think this is like I think that the issue is that you have to pay these 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 agencies, whatever, like a couple of weeks, because obviously they have to keep researching because it keeps getting re-uploaded and stuff, and it's like a longer ongoing process to get it all clear and stuff. So I've only really heard from women exiting who exited after they got really rich and kind of like, you know, got out with you know, lots of capital, and then we're able to clear the internet. But yeah, I think this is a good idea to actually start organizing. Yeah.
I wish I
But
could
yeah,
name
there's
a
a service
service.
for everything.
Oh, sorry.
You can Google it if you want to. You can Google the content removal service. There is several ones. Perhaps I can look it up again and put a link on my Twitter today later on, just for people to see. I can't think of it now on the top of my head, but yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't name such service top of my head either. I do know that in South Korea, there's been a lot of lobbying around this, of women saying the government needs to set up service to do this. And I believe unfortunately, they then had a very right-wing government that defunded a lot of this stuff. But this should be part of feminist lobbying. Women should not have to pay for this. And the other scandal that happened in South Korea was these for-profit, content removal companies. It turned out a lot of them are also investing in porn. So they invest in our exploitation and then invest in our treatment or help or cure or whatever. That is, I mean, there's
They
nothing
create
you should.
a market of desperate women that they then economically profit from. This is
So that's why it cannot be the private sector doing this, because that's some of the private sector currently doing it.
And obviously, the laws that we have existing are usually for revenge porn, obviously, quote unquote. So it's really difficult to obviously get your local laws involved if you uploaded it yourself. That's their winning strategy, which is, you know, that's the winning strategy of all of these monopolies that just provide the platform to just avoid any kind of scrutiny or something, you know. But yeah, maybe I'll research again what I found there, because I think what I've heard this woman talking about was something that was was safe, in the sense that it was created by exiting women, or, you know, women who kind of like understand the business of getting out of that internet stuff. So yeah, I'll research that again.
guys, thank you so much. Really, really interesting and enraging information there, as always, with this topic. Yeah, thank you so much. Guys, if we didn't get to your question, apologies. We're over time a little bit here, I realise as well, and we'll wrap up now. If we didn't get to your question, rest assured we will incorporate it into another event that we're doing at some point. And then please do feel free to email us with anything that you'd like us to raise, and we can prep it even better for you then. We'd love to recommend, it's one of my personal favourites, so I definitely would love to recommend it, the Red Light Expose podcast, which both Elly and Roxy are key members of. Do check it out. They have some absolutely fascinating, brilliant interviews and some really interesting, confronting discussions on issues around the sex industry, and a lot of questions that have been sent in. You'll find your answers there. It's just a trove of information. You can find it on all the usual podcast platforms. And yeah, please do, in terms of Nordic Model Now, and in terms of what we have coming up, please do save the date. On Sunday, the 27th of April, we have the webinar on the grooming gangs. And on the 7th of June, we have a conference in Bradford. And if you've ever been to one of our conferences, you'll know that it's just not to be missed. So please do come along to that. A second. On the 7th of June, the conference actually is Fiona Broadfoot and her Build a Girl project, which, trust me, if I won the lottery tomorrow, I would bankroll every move the woman makes. And that's in tandem with her full day conference. Please do join us. Do also please give us a follow on social media and check out our website, which has massive information. We post every day on our social media platforms, and we'd love to hear from you. And thank you so much for joining us. I mean, and Roxy, Elly, just thank you so much. Just invaluable voices, and yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Thanks a million. Bye bye.